On November 15, 2004, 52-year-old Peter Porco was found dead at the bottom of the stairs of his Delmer, New York home after having suffered massive head trauma. His wife, Joan Porco, was found in the upstairs bedroom, her skull severely fractured in an attack that destroyed one of her eyes. The Porcos were found by one of Peter's colleagues, who'd come to conduct a wellness check after Peter hadn't come into work that day. What he saw that day will probably haunt his dreams for the rest of his life. Who could have committed such a brutal act? That's what we're gonna unpack today as we dive into the case of Peter Porco and the disfigurement of his wife, Joan. Peter and Joan were the sort of people that represented Middle America at the turn of the millennium. Both of them were well-respected professionals, with Peter working as a clerk in the New York State Appellate Division Court and Joan as a children's speech pathologist. They had 2 sons, Jonathan and Christopher, and by all accounts, the Porcos were the picture of a happy family. They were also deeply religious, with Joan practicing so devoutly that she went to church every single day. Both their sons had a knack for academics, with Christopher also showing a certain level of charm that his more introverted older brother somewhat lacked. Their home in Delmer was located in a neighborhood where crime was basically unheard of. That's just the kind of place you can afford when you work such good jobs, and it's safe to say that no one could have expected such a violent attack on the couple in their home. The brutality of the attack is what makes it stand out. As soon as police arrived on the scene, they could tell there was something personal behind the attacks. One of the detectives, knowing that family members are usually prime suspects in cases such as this, asked Joan, who was still barely clinging to life, if a relative had done this to her. Joan managed a weak nod. The detective then asked if this was Jonathan's doing, only for Joan to shake her head. But when he asked about Christopher, the outgoing, popular child, the one that seemed to have no trouble making friends, Joan nodded, indicating that he'd brutalized his parents. If we look deeper into Christopher's background, we'll start to understand how unsurprising it actually is that he did something like this. If anyone looked at Christopher back in those days, they'd see a real charmer. They'd see someone intelligent and sharp, the consummate smooth talker. Only parts of that impression would be true, and not the good parts. Christopher Porco was, indeed, someone that could talk his way out of anything, or at least he saw himself that way. And yet, he wasn't intelligent so much as cunning, and he wasn't charming so much as manipulative. Porco's moral compass was weak, at best. Many would say that he lacked one entirely. But could he really be responsible for the murder of his own father? First, we must understand Porco's past prior to the incident. It's certainly a checkered one, with countless instances of Porco showing a gross lack of moral judgment. For one thing, Porco was a pathological liar. He came from a solid middle-class background, but this didn't seem to be enough for him. After enrolling at Rochester University in 2001, he tried to reinvent himself as the scion of an incredibly wealthy family. He claimed that his dad owned properties all across the world, from exotic locales like Aruba to the peaceful woodlands of Vermont. What he wanted, more than anything else, was to impress other people. He lived for validation. Indeed, he had a tendency to get violent at times, possibly whenever his social status was questioned. This violent streak wasn't just a one-off either. There were plenty of instances where Porco would get uncontrollably angry, so much that people worried he might hurt him. On one occasion, Porco went so far as to threaten a female classmate, saying that he'd kill her. Another incident saw him try to strangle a fellow student at a party, and he might have committed murder then and there if bystanders hadn't stepped in. Porco's most obvious quality was his sheer laziness and entitlement. It's not like he was dumb. Far from it, actually. If he applied himself, he could have gone far to do great things. Instead, he felt like the world owed him something, and that he shouldn't have to work hard to get what he wants. More than anything else, Porco had a strange detachment from the people around him. One could even say that he could be icy at times. His relationship with his brother was strained, at best, and it seemed like he had an almost transactional relationship with his father. Or, to be more accurate, Porco often tried to take financial advantage of his father. But that's something we should get into later. First, we have to cover the chilling calm with which he received the news about the attack. Hi, my name is Chris Forgo. I was just called by a Chinese union saying that my parents were found dead this afternoon. I was wondering if you had any information. I was like, yeah, hey, Carson, whereabouts are you? I'm at school in Rochester, New York. Okay, you're in Rochester? Yeah. Okay. Porco apparently found out about his parents' murder on the news and called into the Delmer police station to inquire about it. His tone seemed like that of someone ordering a pizza. Detached, unemotional, bored even. It's like he just found out about some war breaking out in a far-off land, as if the news didn't really have any effect on him. Some might say that he didn't have any confirmation of the attack just yet, only a news report that he was trying to corroborate. But most people would have been absolutely distraught if there was any chance that their loved ones had come to harm. Porco was eventually able to get in touch with a detective and called him back at the station after experiencing some reception issues. Hi, I'm calling back, detective, I don't remember his name. I was on the phone. Whenever you go, tell me to call you back. Okay, your name? Chris Porco. Hold on 1 second. You. Hey, Chris? Yes. Yeah, okay, that's better. I don't have the static anymore. Okay, so now who's bringing you down? My Uncle John. This is my mother's brother. What's his last name? Belzano. Ealzamo. Okay. Yeah, is it just the two of you that are going to be coming down? As far as I know, yes. Okay. Now, as far as, when was the last time you said you came down to see your parents? About 3 weeks ago? It was on the weekend. I can give you the, as a figure, I'm not really sure. Okay, but about 3 weeks ago? Yeah. Chris claimed it had been 3 weeks since he'd seen his parents, which meant that it would have been impossible for him to be the culprit. Why then had his mother nodded yes when the detective asked if the attack was his doing? That might have something to do with the fraud Christopher had been repeatedly involved in over the past few years. By the way, I post true crime and new cases here every day, so if that sounds like your kind of thing, please consider subscribing. It helps a lot. As we've mentioned before, Porco liked to be seen as the big man on campus. Of course, this required a massive amount of cash to host parties and generally make himself seem like a cool dude. Each round of drinks he paid for bought him some social capital. Each party he hosted got him in with some fraternity or another. He made gifts to frat brothers to make sure he stayed in their good graces. But where'd all this money come from? At some point in the early 2000s, Porco started stealing from his parents. Police investigations revealed that the Porco home had been broken into previously, but at least 2 of these instances were Christopher's doing. While he was home for Thanksgiving in 2002, Porco staged a break-in at his family's residence. This involved cutting into a window screen and stealing 2 laptops belonging to his parents, which he later sold. When his parents bought replacement laptops, Porco staged yet another break-in, using the proceeds to fund his lavish university lifestyle. According to the man who would later try to prosecute Porco, this staged break-in was consistent with what police found on the day of Peter Porco's murder. So the earlier investigation where Jones' laptop was stolen, one of the screen windows, the screen was cut, okay, and the police thought that that was the means of entry to the burglar who stole Jones' laptop. In investigating the murder, the screen in the garage window was cut, okay? So it was like a commonality. Like if this was an intruder, you know, we've got the cut screen when an intruder got in one point in Thanksgiving, I think it was. That's right, the year before it. And then the cut screen in the garage at the time of the homicide. But though his parents reported the break-ins to the police, they weren't able to find evidence of any wrongdoing. This essentially fueled Porco's notion that he could do whatever he wanted without having to face any consequences. Of course, he couldn't fund his lifestyle through petty theft alone. He also had a part-time job at a veterinary clinic. But this turned out to be just another notch Porco added to his burglary belt. The clinic opened up one day to find several electronics and other valuables missing. Porco sold them all on eBay and was never caught for his actions. When he ran out of things to steal, Porco turned to online scams. He'd put items up on eBay, and when they were sold, he'd call the buyer pretending to be his brother and claim that Christopher Porco was dead. E-commerce was still in its early stages, and so people had very few options to verify what happened or even to recoup their money. All in all, Porco was able to maintain an impressive cash flow throughout much of his university tenure. He was able to maintain the appearance of being an upper-class socialite and partied harder than possibly anyone else at college. But that also meant that he had very little time to do any actual studying. In 2003, Porco was expelled from Rochester University due to his poor grades. His parents were disappointed, but they still wanted to support their son, so they helped him enroll at Hudson Community College and came up with a plan to get him back on track. Unfortunately, there was just no helping Christopher Porco. He continued skipping classes and ended the semester with a heartbreaking show of his continued affection for his son. He even wrote a check out to Christopher, possibly because supporting his son was always at the forefront of his mind. Eventually, the massive blood loss took its toll, and Peter collapsed at the foot of the stairs. His colleague later phoned the incident in, and an investigation ensued. All the while, Christopher Porco waited at college, assuming that he'd once again gotten away with it. Porco clearly thought that he was too smart for the police, but they were able to track his movements through CCTV footage. He claimed that he'd been asleep on the dorm room couch that night, but it turned out that a group of students had been there, effectively canceling out his alibi. We were lucky enough that Chris told that same story to everybody, not just the police. He told it to his uncle when his uncle came to pick him up. I slept in the lounge all night. He told it to all his friends. He repeatedly told people at the hospital, where were you, Chris? I was at school. I was sleeping in a lounge all night. And while Chris was being interviewed, there were people there were Bethlehem police at the school interviewing people in the dorm who all said, unluckily for Chris, they all, for some reason that Sunday night, sat up watching a movie in the lounge, a whole group of kids, Shrek 2. I remember the name of the movie. And they all said, Porco wasn't here. Porco was not in the lounge. He was giving up his bed right to his fraternity president who was visiting. No one saw Porco in the dorm lounge that night, even though a huge group of students had been watching a movie there. This wasn't the only piece of circumstantial evidence against Porco either. His car had been spotted going to and from his parents' residence. The security log indicated that whoever entered the home knew the passcode. And there was also the fact that Porco would have received $1.1 million from his parents' insurance payout. When police gathered evidence, Joan woke up at the hospital and didn't look anything like her former self. But she was alive and looked surprisingly good for someone that had nearly been butchered with an axe. The most surprising thing of all was that she recanted her accusation against her son. She claimed to have no memory of what happened and said that her son would never harm her. A year after Peter's murder, Christopher was arrested and charged with second-degree homicide and attempted murder. His bail was set at $250,000, which was mostly paid by his mother. While he was out on bail, Joan even threw him a birthday party to show her support for him. When it came time for him to go to court, she was right there with him, her arm in his, still refusing to believe that her son was the one that attacked her. The jury eventually disregarded her implication of her son, because she may have been too traumatized to fully understand what had happened. Despite this, the rest of the evidence was more than enough.
For Porco, count 1, murder in the second degree. What's your verdict? Guilty.
Porco was sentenced to 50 years for each count, and he'll be eligible for parole in 2052, by which point he'll be 69 years old. Porco maintains his innocence to this day. Yeah, I'll ask you the obvious question again, Chris. Did you do this crime? I didn't. I had nothing to do with this. I've said that from day one, and it's the truth. So what do you think of this case? How does Christopher Porco's story make you feel about trust and betrayal within families? What are your thoughts on the motives, evidence, and the devastating impact on those involved? We'd love to hear your perspective in the comments below. If you like the way we create these videos and want to help bring more cases like this to light, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives. Thank you once again for watching.